So I'm very excited about tonight's class because it really allows us to look at the Torah portion from the Hasidic perspective. Because you could look at the Torah portion, you could read any particular story and understand it on a surface level. But that's not the way that we approach Torah, certainly not from the Hasidic perspective. Rather, we understand and appreciate that within every single story, there is a spiritual dynamic, right? There's a mystical significance to the story that's irrelevant not only in the past, but certainly to our present and absolutely into the future. The story takes place on multiple levels at the same time. And we're going to see that when we ask a question on this story, based not even on one word, but in Hebrew on one letter, it opens up layers and layers of meaning that again provide such significance and meaning for all time and certainly for us today. So we're going to begin with the blessing that Yitzchak wants to give to his children. Yitzchak is becoming advanced in age. He is becoming older. He feels he may pass away shortly. He wants to bless his children before he dies. The blessing is meant to go to Esav first. Esav is the firstborn. Yitzchak says he's hungry. Esav should go out and get him some food. When he returns, he will be satisfied. He can bless Esav. Esav goes off to hunt for some food. Rivka overhears the conversation and she says, no. Yaakov, these blessings are meant for you, and arranges that Yaakov will go before Yitzchak and will receive the blessings. So let's look at the text, page 86, text number 1a. And Yitzchak said to Yaakov, please come closer so that I may feel you, my son, whether you are really my son Esav or not. So Yaakov drew near to Yitzchak, his father, and he felt him. And he said, the voice is the voice of Yaakov, but the hands are the hands of Esav. And he did not recognize him because his hands were hairy, like the hands of his brother Esav, and he blessed him. And he said, are you indeed my son Esav? And he said, I am. And he said, serve it to me that I may eat of the game of my son, so that my soul will bless you. And he served him, and he ate, and he brought him wine, and he drank. And his father Isaac said to him, please come closer and kiss me, my son. And he came closer, and he kissed him, and he smelled the fragrance of his garments, and he blessed him, and he said, behold, the fragrance of my son is like the fragrance of a field that God has blessed. So Yitzchak, with his interaction with Yaakov, although he thinks that he's Esav, is inspired by the spiritual fragrance that Yaakov brings with him to the meeting. Then we have the blessing. Torah portion continues, and may God give you of the dew of the heavens and of the fatness of the earth and an abundance of grain and wine. Nations shall serve you and kingdoms shall bow down to you. You shall be a master over your brothers, and your mother's sons shall bow down to you. Those who curse you shall be cursed, and those who bless you shall be blessed. So it's quite the beautiful blessing. It includes a spiritual element. It includes a material element. It talks about security, strength, right? Having all kinds of goodness. We can understand why it's such a desirable blessing. We can understand why Esav wanted it so much, and why Rivka made sure that it was going to be Yaakov who was going to get the blessing. But there is one problem with this blessing that almost every single commentator points out, and that the first word of the blessing is the word and. In Hebrew, it's just the letter Vav. Anyone who has ever been to school and has taken an English class has been told by your teacher, you are not allowed to start a sentence with the word and, unless you are a best-selling writer. Right? If you're a best-selling writer, then you can get away with anything. But other than that, you're not allowed to start with a sentence with the word and. And the commentaries say, how do you start a blessing with the word and? A blessing starts with, may God give you the dew. A blessing does not begin with, and may God give you the. What does that mean, and? How does and come into play here? So of course we turn to the most important and prominent commentator on the Torah, Rashi. Rashi says, what does the word and mean? It means may he give and give again. In other words, and means a repetition. So the blessing should not be understood in a singular tense, in a singular sense that God is giving you, but rather this is a double blessing. May he give and give again. Now the Rebbe looks at this interpretation of Rashi and says, we can understand the need for a human being to give something twice. A person sits down to a meal, serve them their first course, you know what? They might still be a little hungry. They get a little extra. The same thing could apply to numerous scenarios in life. You give, but a person might need a little bit more because a human being is limited in their ability to fully satisfy another person. You might need to give twice. But when it comes to God, why does God need to give again? If God has given his blessing would include everything and anything for all time. Why does there have to be this repetition in the blessing? This is the way that the Rebbe frames this question. This is text number 3, and again, it comes from the Rebbe's Likutei Sichos, volume 10. What was lacking in the first give that warranted an additional gift? Give again. If we were talking about a human giver, we could understand. Even when one gives a very large and abundant gift, at the end of the day, it has a limit, and as much as the giver is limited. Therefore, it can be supplemented by an additional gift. But in our case, the giver is God. Certainly, God's first gift is complete and unlimited, as God himself is complete and unlimited. If so, what is added by giving again? So we are going to focus today's class on understanding what it means that God's blessing had to be doubled, that he's giving and he's giving again, when you would think that God has the ability with one gift to give ultimately everything that's needed. Why do we need to understand this? Because this is a biblical story. A biblical story means it's irrelevant to me, it's relevant to you, it's relevant to my children, and it's going to be relevant for all time. This is not just a story of Yitzchak blessing his son Yaakov. It's a story of Yitzchak empowering Yaakov and his children for all time. So we need to understand and appreciate what is the nature of the blessing that Yitzchak, our patriarch, is bestowing on all of the Jewish people for all time. What is this repetition? What does the double expression mean? So to begin to understand the double expression, we need to go back to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was a student of Hillel and Shammai, one of the most prominent teachers in the era of the Mishnah. He was the leader of the Jewish people during the destruction of the Second Temple. He led the Jewish people during the siege of Jerusalem. He actually was appointed to be the head of the Sanhedrin in the year 50, approximately 20 years before the temple was destroyed. He led the rebuilding of Judaism in the post-temple era. He moved the seat of Torah study from Jerusalem, which was destroyed, to Yavna, and he is often called the father of post-temple Judaism. He had 5 students, and in the Mishnah and Pirkei Avos, he lists the qualities and the unique character traits of his top 5 students.
That's Pirkei Avos.
Yes, this is Pirkei Avos, chapter 2, Mishnah 9, text 4a. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai had 5 disciples: Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus, Rabbi Yeshua ben Hananiah, Rabbi Yossi HaKohen, Rabbi Shimon ben Nesano, and Rabbi Elazar ben Aruch. He would recount their praises. Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus is a cemented cistern that doesn't lose a drop. Rabbi Yeshua ben Hananiah, fortunate is she who gave birth to him. Rabbi Yossi HaKohen, a chassid, a pious one. Rabbi Shimon ben Nesanel fears sin. Rabbi Elazar ben Aruch is an ever-increasing wellspring. To make it onto this list of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was an unbelievable accomplishment. I mean, it's huge because these students played this critical role in transmitting Torah from the temple era experience where Jewish life was centered around the land of Israel and around the temple to the post-temple era where Judaism was centered in the diaspora and not around the temple. So historically, these students were incredibly significant. And again, to make it to this list, we're talking the major leagues. However, the next Mishnah singles out two of the rabbis that are on this list for individual praise. So this is, again, Pirkei Avos. Actually, it's the continuation of the very same Mishnah. Rabbi Yochanan would say, if all the sages of Israel were to be in one cup of a balance scale, and Eliezer ben Hyrcanus were in the other, he would outweigh them all. So Rabbi Yochanan is telling us that Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus has a quality that outweighs all of the other sages. As great as the other sages have, there's something that Eliezer ben Hyrcanus has that is above and beyond all of them. He outweighs them all. Abba Shaul said in his name, if all the sages were to be in one cup of a balance scale, Eliezer ben Hyrcanus included, and Eliezer ben Aruch were in the other, the latter will outweigh them all. So Abba Shaul disagrees. Abba Shaul says that as wonderful as Eliezer ben Hyrcanus is, it is in fact Eliezer ben Aruch. He has the quality that outweighs all of them. So what is the qualities that each of them possesses? Rabbi Eliezer was likened to a cemented cistern, never lost a single detail from his teacher. So Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus, he was the person who knew absolutely everything. Any topic, any subject, any question, he had it on his fingertips like this. He was a repository of every piece of Torah, every piece of information that he ever learned, like a cemented cistern, never lost a drop. Therefore, Rabbi Yochanan said, this is a scholar who soars above all the rest. However, Abba Shaul felt as accomplished as Rabbi Eliezer is, there is a quality that he does not have, that is found in his colleagues, that overshines him. What is it? Rabbi Elazar ben Aruch, he's like a wellspring, turned out more promising as his learning was ever increasing. Why is Elazar more promising? He may not have had the memory that Rabbi Eliezer had, but he was like a wellspring. Give Rabbi Elazar an idea, he develops it. He improves it. He innovates when it comes to the idea. He doesn't remain with that which was given, but he has the ability to be creative and to expand and to develop that idea and take it into new horizons. We have all heard the expression that give a man a fish, feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, feed him for the rest of his life. This could be a very similar type of comparison. Rabbi Eliezer, absolutely, he had fish. But Rabbi Elazar, right? He was a person, you gave him something, he created a tool that extended and expanded far beyond what was given to him and what was sitting there right in front of him. The Rebbe says, the difference between Rabbi Eliezer and his incredible memory and Rabbi Elazar with his ability to innovate, that is the difference between God giving a blessing to Yaakov versus giving again the blessing to Yaakov. This is text number 5, page 91 of the book. This is again from the Rebbe's Likutei Sichos on volume 10. The difference between the cemented cistern and the ever-increasing wellspring as applied to Yaakov's blessings, Yaakov didn't just receive goodness from above. He also received the ability to stand on his own 2 feet. i.e. to develop that goodness in a personal way using his own resources. This is what it means to give and give again. Yitzchak blessed Yaakov that God give him the goodness from above and also give again the ability to use this goodness and strengthen himself with it on his own. So the Rebbe explains here, why is there this repetition? Why is God giving and giving again? Because the intention was not only that Yaakov should have, not just that he should possess, not just that he should have that fish for lunch, but that he's able to take that blessing, run with it, grow with it, transform it. Compare this to a person who inherits a large business from their parents. You can own the business and take profits from it at the end of every month, at the end of every year, however you want to do it. The business sits, it does its job, you collect your income. Or a person can inherit a business, grow the business, develop the business, multiply the business, branch into other areas, branch into other venues. This was the blessing that Yitzchak wanted to give to Yaakov. Not just that he would have a blessing, but he would have the ability to transform the blessing and making so much more to it. So this is, again, Yitzchak's blessing to Yaakov for his children, and it applies not just for him, but applies to each and every one of us as well. That we have the ability within us to make something more than what we just have, which is, of course, a truly beautiful blessing, a truly beautiful gift that God has given us. So the explanation that we have so far primarily is a blessing from Yitzchak to his children, which does have an application to us. But we want to take this dynamic, which we talk about the cemented cistern versus the wellspring. We talked about the idea of having this rock solid memory versus the ability to innovate. We want to play around with this exact same dynamic, but in a different realm. So we're not going to be talking about memory and innovation. Now we're going to be talking about the difference between a tzaddik and a Baal Teshuvah. A person who was perfectly righteous, who never entered into sin at any point at any time, versus a person who has made mistakes, who has fallen, but has gotten right back up again, the Baal Teshuvah. The tzaddik and the Baal Teshuvah both serve God with fire, with passion, with commitment, with total dedication. However, they come to their service of God from a very different perspective. The tzaddik lives a life in a sheltered utopia. The tzaddik was never exposed to evil. He was never exposed to negativity. He never had to battle with temptation. The tzaddik is good. The tzaddik is righteous. The tzaddik is moral. The tzaddik is ethical and lives in that environment, prays, studies in that environment, righteous and pious. The Baal Teshuvah, on the other hand, is a person who was exposed to negativity, to evil, to all kinds of temptations, experienced cravings and lusts, and actually fell to them, was challenged and failed. Nevertheless, this person rose up again and did Teshuvah, repaired and restored their relationship to God. But it's not just that the person did Teshuvah. The Baal Teshuvah brings the experiences of failure into his relationship with God. The person who is a Baal Teshuvah can take very powerful lessons from his failures and has a unique perspective on life. The Baal Teshuvah has an insight that the tzaddik doesn't have onto the struggles and to the challenges and the natures of life. The Baal Teshuvah takes his past and he uses it as part of his motivation when it comes to serving God. Let's look at text number 6. Okay, we'll look at the text number 6, page 92, a statement from the Talmud, the tractate Yoma. Reish Lakish said, great is repentance, for it transforms one's sins into merits. As the verse states, and when a wicked man repents of his wickedness and performs justice and righteousness, he shall live. So the person who is a Baal Teshuvah has a certain advantage over the tzaddik, because all of the negative experience in his life becomes transformed and included in his service of God, and it actually becomes merits. Reish Lakish was the person who taught this statement, and he was uniquely qualified to teach it because he knew of sin and of transformation and return firsthand. Who was Reish Lakish? A criminal and a gang leader. Let's look what the Talmud has to say. In text number 7, the tractate of Bava Metzia. One day, Rabbi Yochanan was bathing in the Jordan River. Reish Lakish saw him and jumped into the Jordan, pursuing him. Some of the commentaries point out that from the angle that Reish Lakish saw Rabbi Yochanan, right, he appeared to be a woman. So Reish Lakish saw him swimming, thought it was a woman. Again, this is a criminal gang leader, jumped into the Jordan to pursue him. Rabbi Yochanan said, your strength is fit for Torah study. So Rabbi Yochanan sees this mighty, powerful criminal launch himself into the water, and he says, wow, you're so strong. You should be studying Torah. Reish Lakish replied, your beauty is fit for women. Right? That's what Reish Lakish was in the water for. Rabbi Yochanan said to him, if you return to a life of Torah, I will marry you off to my sister, who is even more beautiful than I am. Now, which criminal gang leader can refuse such an offer? Reish Lakish accepted upon himself to study Torah, and Reish Lakish, by the way, did grow up in the yeshiva, was a classmate of Rabbi Yochanan. So he did have a yeshiva background, but definitely chose a different direction. So he accepted upon himself to study Torah. Rabbi Yochanan taught him Tanakh and Mishnah and turned him into a great man. When Reish Lakish died, Rabbi Yochanan was exceedingly pained. The rabbi said, who will go to calm him? They said, let Rabbi Elazar ben Pedat go, as he's proficient in Torah study. So the story continues in the Talmud that Rabbi Yochanan is mourning his best friend, his brother-in-law, right, who he studied with day and night, who he battled with over the pages of the Talmud. And they bring in Rabbi Elazar ben Pedat, and they're studying together. Rabbi Yochanan makes a comment, and Rabbi Elazar agrees. Rabbi Yochanan makes a comment, Rabbi Elazar agrees. And Rabbi Yochanan goes crazy. He says, what do I need you for? He says, when I studied with Reish Lakish, he would argue with me and he could prove me wrong 24 different ways. He would ask 24 questions on everything I said. I was forced to answer him with 24 questions, and we had this battle back and forth. And he cried and he cried and he said, where are you, Reish Lakish? Where are you, Reish Lakish? He mourned the death of his brother-in-law. Rabbi Yochanan was not looking for scholarship. He wasn't looking for a study partner who would verify and back up every opinion that he said as legitimate. He wanted to be challenged. He wanted the creativity of Reish Lakish. Reish Lakish was a person who lived a very different lifestyle. He was a person who sinned. He was a gang leader. He committed crimes. He had a completely different approach to life, turned his life around, went back into the yeshiva, studied Torah once again, and he brought his unique perspective to the Torah study that he learned. And this is what Rabbi Yochanan valued and missed so much. It was the creativity, the innovation, the new perspective that Reish Lakish would bring. The Talmud is full of debates between Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan would suggest an idea, Reish Lakish would tear it down, and from their debate, an entirely new, beautiful idea would emerge. Reish Lakish brought his skills with him from being a gang leader into the Beis Medrash, into the study hall. The tzaddik, the character, the person of a tzaddik, which is the person who is compared to a cistern that doesn't lose a drop, right? This is like the person who does what they're told. This is the righteous person who has that fabulous memory and so on. However, right, the person who, however, the Baal Teshuvah is like the wellspring. The Baal Teshuvah is the person who is unconventional, who has different and unique methods and can expand and grow and enhance the Torah that he studied. So as a Baal Teshuvah, Reish Lakish surpassed the other sages and used his own initiative to progress forward without limit, like an increasing wellspring. In the words of the Rebbe, text number 8, the advantage of the ever-increasing wellspring is his limitlessness, which the cement cistern lacks. Similar, the advantage of Baalei Teshuvah is that their spiritual work is not restricted. As we know, tzaddikim operate in a very orderly, measured way, advancing one step after another. But the Baal Teshuvah can jump every hurdle, advancing without taking the steps. The Baal Teshuvah has a fire, a passion, a creativity that surpasses the tzaddik. The tzaddik is methodical, orderly, while the Baal Teshuvah runs, skips, and can jump ahead due to the energy that the Baal Teshuvah brings with him due to his life experience. With this in mind, we can again revisit the blessings that Yitzchak gave to Yaakov. Give means to have the blessing, like we said, the cistern. Give again, right? We talked about the wellspring, the ability to take that blessing and grow and develop it. Connecting the give and the giving again to the idea of a tzaddik and a Baal Teshuvah adds a whole new layer and a whole deeper dimension. Because the brachas that Yitzchak was giving to Yaakov were not simply that you as an individual are going to be blessed physically, materially, or even spiritually. There's so much more. This is for Yaakov's children and for his descendants and all of descendants after him. What is the inner dynamic of the blessing? Yitzchak was saying to Yaakov, you're going to have children. You're going to have grandchildren and great-grandchildren. You're going to have children in 1,000 years and in 2,000 years and in 3,000 years. You're going to have descendants into the year 2020, into Corona and beyond. Some of your descendants are going to be tzaddikim. Some of your descendants are going to be perfectly righteous, without a temptation, without a craving, without any distraction. Beautiful, holy Jews who do what they are told, who follow the rules and regulations and grow within them to become great scholars and wonderful, righteous people. However, some of your children are going to make mistakes. Some of your children are not going to be perfect. They may fail in all kinds of physical and material ways. They should never think that my blessing is not for them. They should never think that they are outside of or excluded from this blessing that I'm giving you, because the blessing is twofold. I am giving it to you, and I'm giving it again. That means it's not only limited to the tzaddik, it includes within it, it empowers also Baal Teshuvahs. The blessing has the ability to inspire, to motivate, and empower even Yaakov's descendants that stray off the beaten path. They're never too far, they're never too distant. Not only that, they can come back and they can return, and they'll have a quality that even their brothers, the tzaddikim, do not have. Innovation, right? Creativity, the ability to challenge like they wouldn't have. We can now begin to see why it was Rivka who pushed Yaakov to make sure he gets that blessing. Rivka is the classic Yiddish mama. She's the Jewish mother who knew what her children would need, all of her children, not just the righteous, but even the ones who sometimes go off the beaten path. She wanted to make sure that Yitzchak's blessings would apply not just to the tzaddikim, but to every one of her future children and empower them to become Baal Teshuvahs as well. And we see this in text number 9 from the Rebbe's Sicha. It emerges that the blessing Yaakov received, that God give and give again, includes not only spiritual and physical goodness, including both benefits, the full blessing itself, as well as the ability to develop it on his own. Rather, it also includes the ability from above to live by both models of spiritual growth, the tzaddik model, represented by God giving, as well as the Baal Teshuvah model, represented by God giving again. So we see that the blessings from Yitzchak and Yaakov were not just history. They weren't an interaction that applied between a father and a son 3.5 years ago, but the blessings have eternal relevance and very practical significance in our own lives today. Now, building on this theme, we're going to take this idea deeper. We're going to return to the text of the blessing itself, and we're going to see a whole nother layer of meaning that we can appreciate based on all that we have discussed so far in the class. Before Yitzchak gave the blessing to Yaakov, this is what he said. And his father Isaac said to him, "Please come closer and kiss me, my son." And he came closer and he kissed him. And he smelled the fragrance of his garments, and he blessed him. And he said, "Behold, the fragrance of my son is like the fragrance of a field that God has blessed." You could consider the statement to be the introduction to the blessing, the preamble to the blessing, right? There's no blessing that's conveyed in these words. He's simply complimenting his son at this point in time. So reading it on a surface level, it seems to be a compliment that a father is giving to his son before he blesses him. But based on everything that we said so far, this is not just a story of a father blessing his son. This is a story that has cosmic significance. This is a blessing that is conveyed from Yitzchak that will affect all of the Jewish people for all of eternity and empower them and relates to a inner spiritual dynamic and struggle that gets into the heart and soul of every one of Yitzchak's descendants. So what does this introduction mean now that we know that there's a cosmic significance to the blessing that Yitzchak is conveying to Yaakov? The Medrash tells us that just as the blessing that Yitzchak gave to Yaakov is of cosmic significance, so too this introduction is as well. Let's go to the Medrash. Text number 11, page 98 in the book, from the Sifri. This is the Medrash which is called the Sifri in the portion of Vizos HaBracha. Yitzchak's statement, "Behold the fragrance of my son," refers to the sacrifices as a pleasing fragrance. So we'll break apart each line at a time. The Medrash says that when Yitzchak is speaking to Yaakov and he tells him that you have a pleasing fragrance, he is referring to the Beis HaMikdash. That's what he's referring to. He's referring to the temple. What was the main service that took place in the temple? It was sacrifices. The Torah says that when you brought a sacrifice, it represented a pleasing fragrance. So again, it seems like a father is talking to a son. But that's not what's taking place. Much more than that is taking place. A father is talking to all of the Jewish people for all times in the future. Point number 1, he mentions the pleasing fragrance. This is the first Beis HaMikdash. The second thing the Medrash comments, like the fragrance of a field, refers to a vision of the temple destroyed. As the first states, because of you, Zion shall be plowed as a field. So Yitzchak is not just complimenting Yaakov's beautiful fragrance like a field, rather he is hinting and alluding to the fact that the temple, the Beis Hamikdash, is going to be destroyed. And then finally, that God has blessed refers to a vision of the perfectly rebuilt temple in the time of the Mashiach, as the verse states, for their God commanded the blessing life forever. So the phrase that God has blessed is an allusion to the perfectly rebuilt temple. It's an allusion to the Messianic era, which is also called the blessing life forever. So we see again, the story is not a father to a son blessing. There's an inner dynamic, there's a mystical significance here. The temple, as well as the destroyed temple, and the temple that is going to be rebuilt in the age of Mashiach. So as the introduction, Yitzchak hints to the temple in stages of built, destruction, and rebuilding. Now you could ask the question that in this introduction, which has all these deeper allusions, we can understand why Yitzchak would want to reference the first Beis Hamikdash, and we can understand why Yitzchak will want to mention that Mashiach is going to come and there will be a third temple that's going to last forever. However, why mention the destruction now? It's a little depressing. It's a little sad. Why would Yitzchak include in his blessing to Yaakov the fact that the temple is going to be destroyed and that it's going to be plowed like a field? The answer, of course, lies in this entire idea of give and give again. Give is a blessing that Yitzchak's children, his descendants, that Yaakov's children and the descendants of the Jewish people will be like the tzaddik, right? That is the first temple. The hint and the allusion to the fact that Yaakov's descendants are going to be tzaddikim, they are going to build a Beis Hamikdash. They're going to make a dwelling place for God in this world. Yaakov's descendants, the tzaddikim, through their righteousness will create a temple that is righteous and that is holy and that is going to be a pleasing fragrance for Hashem. The fact that the Beis Hamikdash is going to be destroyed, it'll be plowed like a field, but will once again be rebuilt in the Messianic era. This is an allusion to the children of Yaakov that are going to be Balei Teshuvah. The children of Yaakov that may stray off the beaten path, that they will make mistakes, they will fail. The temple, the home for God, which they were meant to create, will be destroyed and plowed like a field. Yet even they have the ability to rebuild the temple once again in the coming of Mashiach, a temple that will last forever and be much greater than the ones that came before it. So the blessings that Yitzchak gave to Yaakov followed exactly in the same theme that Yitzchak conveyed to Yaakov in his introduction to the blessings. Yitzchak was blessing his children, that they should be righteous and that they should be good and they should be holy and they should be tzaddikim. But he was also blessing his children that may not be so perfect, that they will have the capacity to rectify, to rebound, to return to God with the ability of a second chance to become a Baal Teshuvah, and they will be able to have a relationship with God that perhaps is even deeper, more powerful, more meaningful than the tzaddik has. Text number 12, the Rebbe again, Likutei Sichos. The temple, as it was first built, before it was ever destroyed, represents the path of the tzaddikim, who walk the straight path, etc. By contrast, the temple's destruction and subsequent complete rebuilding with the Mashiach represents the path of Teshuvah, which follows decline and destruction. It makes sense then that the temple's destruction is included in the preamble to Isaac's blessing, It matches the theme of the blessing, namely that God give and give again. Together, they are the tools for the path of tzaddikim, as well as the path of the Bali Tshuva. So by including within that preamble the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, he was giving a most powerful message for us and for all times. Because think about what would it feel like to see a temple destroyed. And it's painful, right? It hurts. It would bother you to see the Beis Hamikdash in ruins. Think about the Jew who has walked off the beaten path, who has failed, who has made mistakes, who is very distant and far away from his relationship with God. His relationship with God looks very much like the destroyed temple, is barren and empty, very much like the plowed field. The process of Teshuvah is challenging, it's deep, it's hard. A person has to truly demonstrate remorse. A person has to grow in a major, major way. Think about Reish Lakish. What did it cost him to do Teshuvah? He was the leader of a criminal gang. He was powerful, he was strong, he was wealthy. He had people who looked up to him and people who relied on him. He resigns from this gang. Do you think that's easy to do so? Do you think you could walk away from a life of criminality and just walk right into the yeshiva? That is not easy to do. At this time, Reish Lakish was tremendously vulnerable. It was an incredible, humbling experience. He went from a leader to essentially a nobody. But this is what it takes. This is what it requires in order to grow and to go through that process. And this is what Yitzchak was conveying to Yaakov. That part of the process is there is a moment in life where we look at our life and it seems like a barren and empty field that was completely plowed over. But what's his message? Yitzchak's message to Yaakov is, do not view your field as empty and barren and destroyed. Rather, look at your field as a field that is plowed and prepared for planting. You're not miserable. You're not destroyed. You're not left out. You're left back. You're not lost. You have in front of you the greatest opportunity, not an empty and barren field, but a field that is waiting for you. It's prepared and ready for you to plant in it, and the growth that you're going to see is unbelievable. Very empowering. What Yitzchak is telling to Yaakov, what do I want from my descendants? That when they look at their life and they say, I am not where I want to be, start planting. Rebuild. It's prepared and it's ready for you. Text number 14 from the Rebbe Lukatisifas. For Teshuvah to produce the desired results, it must be geared in the right direction. Underlying the sorrow and regret one feels must be the purpose, fulfilling the Torah and the mitzvahs henceforth. Therefore, the plowed field refers not only to the feelings of brokenness, but also to the growth Teshuvah produces. So Yitzchak was really encoding something quite beautiful in his message to Yaakov. It's not just that a person should do Teshuvah, but it is the destroyed field itself that is part of the process. It's the mistakes you must take them with you, incorporate them, and be part of the Teshuvah process as well. So the attitude that Yitzchak was conveying to Yaakov was, when life is not going the way that you wish it is, don't just say, what will be? What's going to happen? What can I accomplish? Rather, the question you should ask is, what should I do about it? How do I transform an empty, barren field into a newly rebuilt temple? Text number 15, again from the Rebbe. My father, the Rebbe Rashab, writes in one of his letters, a single act is better than 1,000 groans. Our God lives, and Torah and mitzvahs are eternal. Quit the groaning and work hard in actual service of God, and God will be gracious to you. So the Rebbe Rashab is commenting on a fairly common reaction that people have to sin and failure. Often, people are frustrated at the fact that they have sinned and the fact that spiritually they are not the success that they would like to be. Do they turn their life around? Often not. Why? The fact that they're upset about their spiritual status, that for them itself is a victory. They look at other people and say, the other people may live the same lifestyle as me, but they don't care that they're not doing the right thing. I care that I'm not doing the right thing. It bothers me that I'm not doing the right thing. And that's as far as they take it. They are satisfied by the fact that they're not living up to their potential. That itself to them is a spiritual breakthrough. It's a spiritual achievement. It's telling them that at least I care. Do I do something about it? No. The Rebbe Rashab says, based on what we've been talking about in this class, we should not look at our spiritual life as a destroyed and barren field that we sigh and say, what could I do? It's empty, it's barren. Exactly the opposite. Look at the failures and mistakes in your life like a field that has been plowed and is prepared and ready for you to plant, for you to build, and for you to grow. So this ultimately is Yitzchak's incredible message to Yaakov. Again, this is not the story of a father talking to his son 3,500 years ago, but this is the story of Yitzchak blessing his children and empowering them for all times. Even those who are not the most righteous, even those who are not the most holy, even those who have not lived a perfect life, that they have the ability to return, that they should view their life circumstances not as a failure, but as a plowed field that is just ready and waiting for your action. And your action can rebuild the temple. Your action could restore the relationship with God. And you could bring all of your life experience with you, innovate. You can be creative. You can accomplish in life more than a person who went to yeshiva and studied Torah from the day that the person was born. All right, any questions, any comments based on this incredible exploration of the blessing of Yitzchak to Yaakov and for all time? Yes, Mitchell.
Is it not possible the and give, the word and is referring to, he might have been speaking to himself, 5, 6 words or something that were not meant to be heard, but explains the and anyways?
We can come up with alternate explanations. You certainly could. But this class is based on the explanation that Rashi gives, and the style and the focus of Rashi's commentary is not a homiletical type interpretation, but a straightforward interpretation that fits within the meaning of the text itself. So Rashi is telling us very simply and very plainly what was happening on a conversational level. And that's how he explains and. That the and is trying to say it's not just the literal blessing itself, but there's more. There's a double expression that's taking place here. And again, all the commentaries jump on it. And here we have the presentation of the Rebbe on this one extra word and how it applies in our life today and how it's incredibly empowering. Because Yitzchak knew and Rivka knew that in 2020, there's going to be some Jews that, not always so easy to recognize who they are, and that they need a blessing, and they need strength, and they need encouragement, they need empowerment. And you know what? There are Jews today in the year 2020 who did not grow up in a Torah environment, who did not grow up going to yeshivas, and have started studying Torah and incorporating mitzvahs into their life, one mitzvah at a time. And as the years go by and the mitzvahs are incorporated into their life, right, live a most complete and full, beautiful Torah lifestyle. And very often they bring something to the table that a person like me, who grew up in a rabbi's home, who went to fine and wonderful yeshivas in the world, that I might not come up with, I might not have thought of, that I might not have experienced, a perspective and an angle that I don't have, and are able to contribute so much to Jewish life. How are we able to do it in 2020? Because of Yitzchak's blessing to Yaakov that reverberates in each and every one of us today. So take advantage of that blessing. Don't look at your life as an empty, barren field full of spiritual destruction and devastation. Rather, it is a perfectly plowed field that is ready and prepared for us to plant in and to grow something absolutely beautiful that God is going to love and be proud of, and that we can make a phenomenal contribution to the destiny and the future of the Jewish people. Next week, Tuesday night, we're not going to have the Torah Studies Parsha class because we are kicking off the first event of a 10-month event exploring 10 of the Rebbe's Mitzvah campaigns. And we are very honored to have my father as the first speaker to kick off the series. So next Tuesday, we will not have this class. I will see if I could record some version of the class and post it for people to be able to watch. Otherwise, we're going to have this presentation from my father next Tuesday.